I'd rigged myself up in a bullwhacker's garb, blue flannel shirt, pair of pants, belt, cartridges, revolver, bowie knife, pair of heavy boots, broad brim hat, and an up-to-date bullwhacker's whip, 3 feet stock and 12 feet lash, with extra buckskin to repair the whiplash and make new poppers at the end of the lash. With 2 pairs of blankets, a war sack, and an old army overcoat, I was ready to accompany Swank and join the outfit, which was camped some 3 miles west of the city. We arrived at camp shortly before noon, and I was ordered by the assistant wagon boss to go out to the herd and relieve the herders. The herd was a mile or so west of camp. This herding was new to me, and being afraid that some steers might stray away, I made it an unnecessarily hard task. But the work was not without interest. While tramping around the steers, I imagined I could pick out friends and enemies. These work cattle. Some had never seen a yoke, let alone been worked. Part were native cattle, others Cherokee, and some Texas. When the 2 mounted night herders came out about dusk to relieve me, I thought I had put in a faithful half day. I returned to camp but found it deserted. Even my friend Swank had gone to the city. I went through the cook wagon and tent thinking I could find something to eat, but did not. So I spread my blanket under the wagon, lay down, and was soon fast asleep. The bullwhackers continued to come into camp until towards morning, when one of the night herders rode in to wake the cook to get breakfast. It consisted of coffee, syrup, fried bacon between a thick pancake or thin pone of bread baked in a covered skillet. The bread was made from flour and common baking soda. The cook said the sugar had not come yet. In the morning, I was set to work with Swank making oxbow keys and fitting bows to yokes. I began to get acquainted with my fellow bullwhackers. A few were good men, some medium, and others very bad. Lack of enforcement of law and order seemed to add to their meanness. The men ranged in years from 20 to 45, and as I seemed to be the only one in this crowd of about 33 men who did not drink, swear, play cards, smoke, or chew tobacco, I was soon put down for a goody-goody or a fool for lacking these accomplishments. One remarked that my early education had been sadly neglected. I took these jokes good-naturedly. Each teamster with a 60-hundred loaded wagon consisted of coffee, sugar, beans, flour, bacon, salt, crackers, condensed milk, syrup, desiccated vegetables, boots and shoes, etc., was given 6 yoke of cattle. The wheelers and lead cattle were somewhat gentle, but the 4 yoke of swing cattle were more or less wild, as this was the first time they'd been yoked up. It took sometimes a dozen men teamsters, wagon bosses, and night herders to get one team started. At times, the wild swing cattle would start on a run or stampede, getting ahead of the leaders, when all we could do was to keep them on the trail. We had upset 2 wagons, and by the time night came, we had made probably a mile. We dropped the chains from the yokes of the swing or wild cattle and unyoked the gentle cattle only. It took about 10 to 15 days before we controlled our wild cattle, but once broken, they did good work. The daily routine of a bullwhacker's life on the trail, while a hard one, was not all clouds. It had its sunshine. The bullwhackers in camp, when there were no wheels to fix, tires to tighten, boxes to wedge, oxen to shoe, or clothes to wash or mend, could sleep, play cards, write letters, or tell stories. The stories of one old bullwhacker who had seen much of the frontier life were quite interesting. He would tell about the noted stage company boss, Jack Slade, who caught one of his stage tenders listening at a door and who whipped out his bowie knife and cut the listener's ear off, telling him if he ever caught him doing it again, he would cut his heart out, and hundreds of other such bloodthirsty stories. We had one bullwhacker in our train who had been scalped by the Indians near Fort Leonard. The Indians scalped him, stripped all his clothes off him, and to see whether he was dead, stuck sharp-pointed arrows between his toes. We had another bullwhacker who carried several scars made by Indian arrows. But no matter, this is old.